Today, I've got a personal story for you. See this stack of bills? 35 pages. Who would think that something as small as an infected toe could add up to $138,000? But today, I'm going to tell you the story about what happened to my own father, and luckily, he has a G plan. I'll tell you what he had to pay for all this, and if you've ever wondered if a G plan is worth it, stick around because I think this is going to be very eye-opening. Hey, I'm Erica Smiley with Medicare School, and today I want to tell you about this medical nightmare my dad went through that started with an infected toe. I'll break down exactly what the medical bills were. We'll talk about what original Medicare and his G plan covered, how much he had to pay out of pocket, and how this could have looked really differently had he had a Medicare Advantage plan. So a lot of people, insurance is just one of those things you hate to pay for until you need it, right? You may think, hey, I'm healthy. I don't really need to go to the doctor very often. I don't have a lot of needs. But this story is something that started out with something very small, an infected toe. And it turned into months and months of, just a real medical nightmare and a lot of bills. And we always say all the time, there's no crystal ball with health, right? Things can change on a dime and you never know what's going to happen. So now this story is about my dad, and he is lucky. I did not help him. I did not even work in insurance when he got signed up with his G plan decades ago. He's 85 years old, and he's had his supplemental G plan for quite a while. And I will say my mom and dad, these rates do go up with medical inflation. They pay over $300 a month each for their Plan G, and they don't complain about it at all because they have totally gotten their money's worth out of this with the medical care they've needed at 85 years old. So, my dad has had heart attacks, open heart surgery, bladder cancer. He's had to have brain surgery because he fell in the backyard. So he's had a lot of medical history, but he's been doing great until this recent infected toe. So I want to break down how something simple like this can really turn into a big ordeal and the costs that are involved. So about 6 months ago, my dad started to have a lot of swelling in his foot and in his ankle. And we didn't think much about this because with all of his heart problems, we just thought, oh, he has, bad blood flow and he's just having some swelling. Well, he had to go to the doctor multiple times. This was actually causing him to have some problems with his heart as well. So he went in and they just treated it like a basic infection. He kind of came home, he was in the hospital for about a week. They watched his heart because he was having some AFib where his heart was beating irregular and beating fastly. But that seemed stabilized, so they sent him home. He was still having the horrible problem with pain and swelling in his foot and his ankle. So he went back and they had to do a test, and they found out after a biopsy that he had a MRSA infection in the bone in his toe. So after they did the biopsy, they kind of kept him in the hospital, gave him some antibiotics and treated him for this and said, hey, we think we got all the infection with the biopsy. You should be good to go. They stitched his toe up, and then he ended up going home after about a week and a half to 2 weeks in the hospital. So he's happy to be home. He's hoping he's past this. And then all of a sudden the stitches rip. This is gross. I'm sorry if you're eating while you're watching this video, but he starts to bleed out. He could have died. He lost so much blood from this toe. And him and my mother ended up having to call an ambulance to come pick him up and take him to the hospital. When he got to the hospital, he had to be given blood. He had to get a couple pints of blood because he had lost so much blood. And that's when all of this started. So the ambulance takes my dad back to the hospital where he's admitted, and they go back in looking at the toe, and they find out they did not get all of the infection. So they ended up having to amputate his toe. The whole time this was kind of causing him some AFib, so he's having to have these different heart procedures as well just to check that everything's okay with his heart, but ended up having to have his toe amputated. So he was in the hospital for about 3 weeks. He even had to have a special piece of equipment, a wound vac, which I think is used a lot for diabetic patients who have trouble with wounds that won't heal. So he's hooked to this wound vac. He's in the hospital for about 3 weeks. And then they finally say he's going to have to go into a rehab center. He's going to have to go into an assisted living rehab center and stay there for a couple months till he's able to come home. So they have to take him by ambulance to the skilled nursing facility. He's in the skilled nursing facility for about 45 days, where he has to be taken 2 or 3 times by ambulance to go see an infectious disease doctor. He's given physical therapy the whole time he's there. They took great care of him. But here we have this whole 3-month ordeal now that resulted in 3 different hospital stays that were multiple weeks long, about 3 or 4 different ambulance rides, many medical tests, surgeries, a wound vac, physical therapy, and skilled nursing facility. So luckily, after about 3 months, he got strong enough that he got to come home. But when he's home, they said, you need to have a home health care person come out and visit you at home. So you can imagine these medical bills are ringing up. It's a lot of cost, a lot of doctors involved, and a lot of people who gave him excellent care. So we are very lucky he got excellent care. But you think about, what are all these bills going to look like that start coming in for this? So again, I brought this stack. These are actually from Medicare, talking about all the different charges, what Medicare pays, what the supplemental plan would pay, and what they owe. This is about 35 pages I had my mom save for me of his bills, and that's not even all of them. Now, my dad's a retired fireman. You know, I come from a blue-collar family. They don't have a ton of money in their budget every month, but they do have their supplemental G plans. And I hear over the years a lot about, you know, their health problems. They're at this doctor, they need this surgery, or they're in this hospital. But I never hear them complain about insurance companies, or having to call the insurance companies, or having to fight for anything to be covered. I really have never heard my parents talk about that. They're very independent. Even at 85, they take care of their own, you know, finances and everything. I haven't had to get involved in that at all. But it's just interesting that I never hear them really gripe or complain about anything. So I told my mom, I want to dig into this. Tell me, what do you guys pay for your G plans? And over the 20-some years they've had them, I think they pay about $300 and some each per month to have those plans. And they say, thank goodness we have them, because it covers everything. My dad said we would probably be medically bankrupt if we had all these bills and all these hospital stays over the years and didn't have our G plans. So I just bring this up because I asked my mom, what did you have to pay for this? What did this cost you? Because myself, being younger and having employer insurance, I have another video you can check out where I was supposed to have knee surgery, and just to go to the pre-op appointment cost me like $800, right? I have to pay a lot out of pocket for my medical care. But with my parents having Medicare and their G plans, I said to my mom when this was all done and my dad's back home, man, this must cost you a lot, or like, what did you have to pay for this? Or was this a headache? She's like, zero. We pay nothing. We've already met our Part B deductible for the year, which was $257. They probably met that by the end of January. She's like, we paid absolutely nothing, no bills. And they didn't have to call the carriers and fight to get things covered. So that's why I wanted to talk a little bit today about, you know, people wonder all the time, is a G plan or are these supplemental plans worth it? Because yes, the prices have gone up a little bit, and they're not $0 like Advantage plans, but it is truly amazing the things that they cover and how comprehensive these supplemental plans are. Now again, at Medicare School, we write both plans. We can help you out with supplemental plans or Advantage plans. But sometimes people will say, well, hey, you guys seem a little skewed towards supplemental plans. That's not the case. It's just that if you have the money in your budget for these, it gives you a lot of freedom. Our founder, Marvin, you've probably seen a lot of his videos. He's turning 65 in January, and he has said he will get a Plan G. That's the direction he's going to go with Medicare. So what I wanted to show you today is actually I went in, because I'm an agent and I can do this, I pulled up a PPO Advantage plan for my dad in his zip code. And I wanted to show you some of the breakdown of costs that he would have paid out of pocket had he had a PPO Medicare Advantage plan instead of his Plan G. So the first thing that I like to look at with these Advantage plans is the max out of pocket. So the max out of pocket, or the MOOP, sometimes we call it. And this is the most you would pay in a calendar year for your care. So again, I pulled up a plan in my dad's area, which is a Medicare Advantage plan. And this plan was a PPO. Okay, so PPO means you can go in or out of network. You're just going to pay a little bit more if you're out of network. So the first thing I wanted to look at on this plan is what's the max out of pocket, right? My dad's had a bad year. He's had a lot going on. So what's the max out of pocket he would have had to pay in this calendar year with this Advantage plan? Well, if he would have gone to all in-network doctors, meaning every doctor that helped him in the hospital and everything was in network, his max out of pocket would have been $6,100, okay? Now, out of network, if he would have been out of network or any of those doctors were out of network or any of the care, he would have had to pay $10,100, over 10 grand in a max out of pocket. So already, let's kind of look at the breakdown of this. I told you my dad pays about $300 a month for his G plan, Plan G, 12 months in a year. He's paying a premium of about $3,600 a year to have that Plan G. Now, we know that outside of that premium, the only thing he has to pay is the $257 Part B deductible. So I'm bad at math. I got to write it out here. So that's, no, I did my math wrong. I told you I'm bad at math. Okay. So that actually comes out to $3,857. $3,857. This is a rough estimate of what my dad's paid for his Plan G and his $257 deductible this year. So you can see already we're coming in lower than these Advantage plans. $3,857 is much lower than even the in-network max out of pocket, which would be $6,100. Now let's break this down a little bit more. What all adds up to that max out of pocket? Well, first of all, when you have an Advantage plan and you have a hospital stay, this is one of the things that can be the most costly. Now on this Advantage plan that I looked at for my dad, had he had this Advantage plan, you have to pay a copay for the first 5 days that you're in the hospital. Okay, so the first 5 days you're in the hospital, that would be $440 a day. So that would have totaled for him $2,200. He already would have been paying $2,200 just for the first 5 days in the hospital. Now, if he would have been out of network, that's actually a 50% coinsurance. He would have had to pay 50% coinsurance if the hospital was out of network. Now, I don't know how they decide this, but I would think if you're bleeding out in your home and they put you in an ambulance, they're going to rush you to the closest hospital probably, or whatever network they're involved with. I doubt they were checking his insurance, or they're going to check someone's insurance to see which hospital is in network for you. So just know you're looking at least around $2,200 for an in-network hospital, but it would be even more if you were taken to an out-of-network hospital. All right, so we looked at the hospital cost. Let's look at the doctor's part of this. So if your doctor is in network, it's a $0 copay, okay? But with the Advantage plan, this particular plan, if you see a doctor that's out of network, you have to pay 50% of that bill. Now, again, my dad couldn't go and check every doctor that's seeing him to see if they were in network. He had a lot of doctors that were caring for him, between internal medicine doctors, podiatrists, infectious disease doctors, surgeons. So this is something to note too. I'm sure he would have got some bills to have to cover some of those doctors that helped him out. Same with specialists. So specialists, if you go to a specialist, which that podiatrist, the infectious disease doctor, all of those would be considered a specialist. So those, even in network, are a $45 copay if you're in network. And again, 50% if you're out of network. So there'd be a lot of big expenses with as many doctors as he had to see. Now, if you remember with the Medigap plan or those supplemental plans, you can see any doctor because as long as they accept original Medicare, they're going to accept your supplemental plan. Okay, so we talked about the max out of pocket in the hospital stay. Let's look at some other things and what they cost or would have cost my dad if he was on this Advantage plan. Diagnostic tests. Yeah, he had probably a lot of those. Anywhere from a $0 to $105 copay for in-network, 50% if you're out of network, okay? Labs, I'm sure you had some labs done, up to $60 copay or 50% if you're out of network. Radiology, up to a $600 copay if you're in network, and then up to 50% out of network. X-rays could be from $0 to $130 in network, 50% out of network. An ER visit. He went to the ER like 3 times over this. $120 copay each time. And that's if it's in or out of network hospital. Skilled nursing facility. This is another big one, like the hospital stay. So for this Advantage plan, if my dad had that, he would have had to pay $200 every day for the first 20 days he was in there. That's crazy. So that would have been $4,000 alone just for that. And he was in there for 45 days. So yeah, he would have had to pay the full 20 days, $200 a day. And then an ambulance ride, I think he took 3, maybe 4 of those. Even if it's an in-network service, $315 a trip. So you can see, like, cha-ching, 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 how this is adding up. He would have definitely probably hit that $10K max out of pocket. So the thing to keep in mind with my parents being on a tight budget, the thing they like is with the G plans, they can budget for it. They know how much they have to pay for those supplemental plans every month. And it's not one giant lump sum. Now, my parents might have been in a worse situation had they had to have paid $10,000 all at once for this infected toe ordeal. So it's just nice if you want to budget, know what you have to pay with that supplemental plan. They also had no added stress or headaches about prior authorizations in or out of network doctors. They didn't have to worry about any of that. This was a very stressful situation. You know, my dad can't go up and down the stairs to do their laundry, so I had to hire somebody to do their laundry. We had to hire somebody to cut their grass. They've had to hire and have help cleaning their home. So there's a lot of things that were stressful anyways. But with this supplemental plan, they did not have to worry about stress of calling these insurance carriers or huge bills. It's taken care of. So again, we just want you to know this and really break this down in some real life stories. So when you're making this decision, you may be healthy now, but again, there's no crystal ball in health. If you have the money in your budget to get that supplemental plan, remember, you don't have any underwriting to go through if you're in that 6-month Medigap OEP window when you first start Medicare. But it's not like you can start with an Advantage plan and then down the road when these things happen, say, oh gosh, I have cancer or I have to be in the hospital or this and that. Now I need the supplemental plan. It'll be too late because you won't be able to be approved. So I just wanted to do this comparison today to kind of show you. My parents paid $0. Had they had an Advantage plan, yeah, they pay $0 every month for that. But just in this infected toe ordeal, they would have paid probably close to $10,000 or more. So again, we aren't biased over which plan you choose because it's not for us to choose which plan is best for you. It's up to you to choose. But we want to make sure you understand how both systems work. An Advantage plan may be best for you if you're, on expensive medications, you have that drug coverage wrapped in that plan, maybe you like the perks, and you just don't have the budget to pay that $0 every month. But hey, if you have the money and it's in your monthly budget, you're going to get a lot of freedom and flexibility and peace of mind with those supplemental plans. So again, just wanted to share this real life story and what this could have looked like on a Plan G versus a Advantage plan. Again, we're always here. We're a free service to you. Book with one of our guides. Call us, click the QR code to schedule an appointment, and we can help talk you through your unique situation and the plans and make sure you have all the education you need to choose what's going to be best for you.